Alright guys, thank you for joining me here at American Overwatch. I'm going to go over a couple of things that has been in the news lately that has a lot of people upset or concerned, rightfully so, given the fact that we have conducted a strike against Major General Qassem Soleimani, who is the top commander for the Quds Force. Now, before I go any further into our opinions or assessments as to what the ramifications are, you need to kind of have some background on Iran, their military composition, disposition, capabilities, and who in the hell is the IRGC and the Quds Force, okay? So the IRGC is actually a term that encompasses all of the Iranian military. The Quds Force is essentially the Iranian military's special operations force. Okay, they're tasked with pretty much everything, and I'll get to that point later. But the Quds Force in Iran is pretty much tasked with almost every mission. And this is twofold. One is because primarily Iran does not have a strong, capable, conventional military. And two, it offers Iran plausible deniability. And what I mean by that is the Quds Force will reach out to proxy terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah or Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda or any of these other organizations and have them conduct attacks on behalf of Iran. Now, you also have to understand it gets complicated, but when we're talking about Shia versus Sunni, you have to understand that the predominant Muslim sect in Iran is Shia. And that the same can be said in Iraq. So you have a minority, the Sunni and the Kurds, that exist within Iraq, and you have Iran, who is the majority is Shia, as well as Iraq. So that's some background on the countries themselves. Following the attacks, now let's just do a little bit of justification on here. Let's justify why this attack is a good thing and why it took place decisively. You know, Soleimani is not a nice guy. Everybody's already said it. The Democrats have said it. The Republicans have said it. There's a nonpartisan debate. There's no debate as to whether or not this guy was a good guy or a bad guy. We know he was a bad guy. We know he was an evil guy. There's no debate there. Problem is, people start to debate whether or not they should take out a major general of a foreign nation and all this other stuff. And then what are the ramifications? Well, here's the deal. Soleimani has been going around throughout the entire region operationalizing terrorist organizations and cells, undermining the security in the region and maintaining instability within the region. That's in Syria with al-Nusra, that's in Iraq with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, that's in Africa with Al-Shabaab, that's in Yemen with the Houthis. So this isn't anything that's new. He's been doing this for decades. So now you have to think, put on our hats, put on our thinking caps. There is an awful lot of protesting that's been going on outside the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. They're throwing things, fireballs, and lighting branches on fire, throwing things, right? I mean, they're getting pretty violent. They're ripping signs down. They broke through the first layer of security where the Iraqi security force was supposed to be guarding, which is not a surprise to me. They broke through that, and basically what happened is the Marines that were securing the compound held them back. And then all of a sudden, one of the, I guess, the organizers of the protest gets a phone call, and then they sort of disperse. So the FBI currently is working in conjunction with the State Department and a couple other intelligence agencies to try and ascertain, what was said on the phone call, who made the phone call, where did it come from, those sort of things. But coincidentally, either a day or two later, Qassem Soleimani lands and touches, ground right in Baghdad. Right when these protests are happening. So the President of the United States goes on national television and says, hey, we had imminent threat, we had intelligence for an imminent threat, so we took him out. Well, that kind of coincides with what was going on the ground, especially with the U.S. Embassy, and we're not going to have another Benghazi. That makes perfect sense. So now here we are, he's already dead, we can't take it back, the airstrike happened, it's done. What does that mean? Well, it means status quo. Nothing really changes. And the reason why nothing really changes is because of this significant fact. Okay? Well, I brought them up so that way you would have a better understanding. Okay, so the IRGC's ties to a non-state armed group region such as Hezbollah and Lebanon helps Iran compensate for its relatively weak conventional military force. Okay? Iran has a weak conventional military force. They do have an integrated air defense artillery system. However, these systems need to work in conjunction with radar, over-the-horizon radar, a variety of different radars in order to triangulate and pinpoint and direct and guide a missile to a moving target, especially if that moving target is moving at like Mach 2 or Mach 3. So, and by Mach 3, I mean Mach 3 or Mach 4, I mean, a missile or a rocket. So, to intercept something like that would be awfully tough, although they do have a better capability than some other countries. But nonetheless, they do not have a strong military. They do not have the capability. They don't have the economy to sustain a long war. There is no such thing as a long war with Iran. Okay, it's going to be a swift, decisive, targeted attack on specific sites that the United States Department of Defense and their targeting officers deemed the greatest bang for their buck is what they're getting at. So they're going to target the biggest bang for their buck, and that's about it. There's not even going to be a ground war or anything like that. Okay. So since there's not going to be a ground war, and there's not going to be boots on the ground and everybody's fighting in trenches and stuff and everybody thinks World War III's coming, I just want to go and say, well, we've already talked about that. So Russia here, they made a statement, and they basically, they didn't condone the attack. They just said that it's going to create grave consequences for regional peace and stability. And I perfectly agree with that. Totally agree with that on 100%. And that last sentence there, it'll lead to new rounds of escalating tensions in the region. 100% agree with that. The countries that have to worry, definitely Israel. Israel came out with a press statement that basically said the United States has a right to protect themselves, and they have the right to do so in any manner. And we support the United States, and the United States supports us in any basically military operation. So Israel was actually okay with it, and they're not really even that terrified. And when you talk about Iran using Lebanon Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, right on Israel's back door, as a proxy to these attacks, you would think Israel would be a lot, their rhetoric would be a lot more heightened. They would be a lot more nervous. They would be a lot more scared about what are the things to come. But it doesn't really matter because, as I said again, over the years, Iran has consistently defied the international community and the United Nations in almost every regard. They've the nuclear accord, everything. They've done it all. It doesn't matter. The fact that they said that they're stepping away from the nuclear accord and they're not going to abide by any of it anymore, any longer, because of this, it literally changes nothing. They went from a covert basically military operations to not military operation, but nuclear refinement operation to a overt nuclear refinement operation. So it didn't really change anything at all. All they're doing is all they're really doing is just basically saying, yeah, now we're actually doing it, right? That's what they're doing. So, I mean, bear with me here. Something happening. I'm trying to get myself back. I think here I am. Okay, sorry about that. So, anyways, they basically went from covert nuclear refinement to overt nuclear refinement. Nothing changed. Okay, they were doing it. They were trying to do it secret, which we already knew they were, and all this other stuff. Now they're out in the open about doing it. Nothing changes. It's literally status quo. Okay, for those fanatics out there who think, oh my God, there's going to be a crazy war and the draft's going to happen, and I can't go to the draft because I stubbed my toe and I'm going to school for higher education and I can't go to combat. Stop. The U.S. military is already strong enough that there's no draft. It's not going to be a draft. Okay, people will willfully sign up, and for those who are weak-minded, who think that that they can't go to war, they can't deal with all that stuff, and no one else should. There'll be plenty of Americans who will gladly sign up for patriotic pride and go to combat. So we don't need you. Just keep your mouth shut. Tuck your head between your tail. Go sit somewhere and watch it on CNN, because there'll be plenty of other Americans that'll sign up in your place. So, and they'll willfully do it, and they'll do it for the greater good of the nation. So this is from the Rand Corporation. I'm not really sure why I pulled this up. I was trying to find the effectiveness in the doctrine from for Iran, so you guys can actually see asymmetric ambition and conventional reality, and so basically what their capabilities are. I can't drive this home enough. They basically pour all their money in the Quds Force, because their Air Force and their Army and all that stuff is like desolated. It's almost, not that, I don't want to say it's non-existent, but it's not. They're not like they're not a superpower. They're not even close to being a superpower. The economy's in shambles. They can't afford a war. They just can't do it. So 3% of the gross domestic product goes to the defense expenditures. That was in 2001. Okay, so we have to understand, now we have even harsher sanctions on Iran. Their economy is even further in the ground. So even if they maintained a 3% of their GDP, let's look at what their current GDP is today. Alright. Forecast to shrink another 9.5% in 2019. I'm like lost. What is that? Like a negative? I guess that's like a has fallen deep in the recession. Okay. So, anyways, you guys could read all of that and figure it out for yourselves. But the bottom line is that, according to BBC News, it just goes ahead and proves what it is that I am trying to say. Okay, so basically, their economy is in shambles. Before Soleimani was basically killed, not basically, but before he was killed, there was protests all over the place in Iran because of their economy and all this stuff. And now what you kind of sort of see in Iran is this renewed national sense of pride, and they have a common enemy. Now the government's not the enemy anymore, because the government, you know, is doing things piss poor and making decisions that are poor for what's poor for the people. Now the United States kills one of their own, and now it just sort of unites the Iranian people and reinvigorates the populace. What does that mean in the long term? Nothing really, because they're still going to be, when they go home at the end of the day, they're still going to be broke, not going to have any jobs, there's not going to be any imports, there's sanctions involved, people aren't going to be able to spend their money. So there's a lot of things that are going on within Iran that you need to seriously take into consideration before, you know, everybody goes over the top and says, "Oh my God, the president made such a terrible decision. I can't believe this." And stop listening to the Democrats, because they, you know, it's so funny. You get one news report and they say, I hate to bring them up, but you get Alex Jones, you know, that said like 4 or 5 years ago that there's been Hezbollah sleeper cells that are in the United States, and one day they'll wake up and there'll be bombs everywhere. And then they all call him crazy, and they say, you know, that's nuts. You're a crazy nut job, whatever, right? And a lot of people agree that he's a crazy nut job. And then you kind of go forward, and then here we are, and we're building the wall. Why are we building the wall? Because we don't want cartels and terrorists coming over the porous Mexican border. And then all of a sudden resurfaces now in open source media, you know, there could be Hezbollah sleeper cells in the United States. And then you get Iran's statement that says, we know where you are, we could touch you in the homeland. The only way they can physically do that is if they're physically here. They have mid-range continental ballistic missiles. They don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. There's no way for them to reach out and touch the continental United States. So the only way for that to actually happen is if they're here. So let's just, for the sake of argument, take what Iran said to be true. Let's take what now the liberal media is saying in open source, saying that there's a possibility of Hezbollah sleeper cells here in the United States. Why are they fighting the border wall? Is it not more paramount today than ever to have a border wall? To be able to screen people that are coming through? This makes sense, guys. This is why we want the border wall. So, regardless if there's Hezbollah sleeper cells in the United States or not, is irrelevant. It's the possibility that they could be here. It's the fear that you guys believe that they're here. Now, whether they're here or not, I don't know. But what I am saying is that it only lends credence to Trump's wall. So, with that being said, the president is not actually going, the United States isn't actually going to have a ground and pound war with Iran. Iran can't sustain a war at all, period. What'll happen is, if anything, it'll be Iran's proxy terrorist organizations that conduct suicide bombings at various soft targets, maybe embassies in Africa, U.S. embassies in Africa or around the region, of various military bases that are constructed throughout the region. Israel is probably going to see a pretty heavy hit, if at all. Maybe Turkey, doubt it. Russia, no way. That's the last thing that they want to do. I'm not really sure what the extent of their medium-range continental ballistic missiles are, but I'm sure they could touch Eastern Europe. So there's probably some countries over there that should be pretty worried about whether or not, Germany, France. They're not really technically Eastern Europe, but I'm not sure if their medium continental ballistic missiles can reach out and touch that far. But it's probably likely. So they have a dog in this fight now, and it's up to them to seriously get behind the decision that was made. You can't unmake it. So that's where we are with it. I don't think there's any reason why anybody needs to get real crazy about all of this as it pertains to United States. Okay, so this is just another source that I went to basically review how the Iranians would fight. But again, it all basically boils down to asymmetric conflicts and stuff like that. So here's a threat perception. So Saudi, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to have to do my own little research on this. I don't want to be wrong when I say this. Yeah, so this is the interesting part. Okay, I was right what I was thinking. I just want to make sure I was correct. So you have to understand the Shia-Sunni dynamic in the Middle East, and the reason why they perceive Saudi Arabia to be an enemy in the region is because the vast majority of Muslims that reside there are Sunni. Remember, Iran, the majority is Shia. So for whatever reason, the Shia, I know what the reason is. Culturally, Americans will never understand it. It's just something that's been totally ingrained in the Middle East for thousands of years. But they hate each other with unprecedented level. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on it, guys. I'm not really sure if I hit all the buttons and covered all of your guys' concerns, but I'll let you, just to summarize, Iran in the past has used the Quds Force for plausible deniability, to maintain plausible deniability, and to affect terrorist operations around the world globally to advance Iran's interests. They do not have a very capable conventional military. They cannot sustain a military conflict at all. Can't do it. Okay. They do have advanced ballistics. They do have advanced air defense artilleries and things like that. But the United States military doctrine deals with these sort of things. So there's really no need. As far as a ground and pound invasion, not going to happen. President Trump doesn't want that to happen. Never going to happen. The only reason why there's reinforcements in Iraq right now is to make sure that the U.S. Embassy and surrounding bases are reinforced and they're safe, and that the people are safe. Until Iraq gets their stuff together and makes a resolution, basically either keeping us there or booting us out. And then the troops will be withdrawn from the region, and then it'll be a regional problem. So it'll be a regional problem. It'll always be a regional problem, and regional countries within the area need to step up. You can't have the United States. We can't have our cake and eat it. Okay, either we are a policing force or we're not. Okay, either we, we go and we attack terrorists that are responsible for killing hundreds of Americans, millions of innocents, and we kill that guy, or we sit back like before World War II and we let 6 million people die. It's really our call, and it's really our responsibility, because we have the capability. It's what you do with your capabilities that characterize you and as a person and as a country. We have right now the capability to police the world. We have the capability to go around the world and support our allies and the innocent people who have suffered at the hands of this. Now, what you may not understand, and I'll make my point very clear, is that these countries censor their internet. So any information that might be contrary to what it is that they're doing within their own nations is totally negated. And you might find some things on the dark web. You may find some guy who uses a VPN to get out to say something, but I guarantee you he's not gonna be around for much longer. Not gonna happen. And Iran does have an advanced cyber capability, but let me just say this. I did not talk about that. Let me say that their advanced cyber capability. Listen, defacing a public government website to which no one knew existed. I didn't know it existed. It's not complicated. It's not hard. That's so silly. It's so stupid. It's really all it is. Okay. But with that being said, okay, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of Americans out there that are worried about, the Iranians, cyber hacking our utility grid and shutting down the power and the water and stuff like that. I'm like, Jesus, you guys have watched way too much TV. No, that's not gonna happen, okay? And that is for a whole different conversation. That's for a whole different video, and I could talk about hours as to why that's not gonna happen. And I'll just tell you, I'll give you a glimpse of it. The internet or the intranet or whatever it is that you want to call it, the network that runs the systems, don't touch the internet physically. There's no connection. So you can't go to www.floridapower.com/nuclear reactor and then see all the little different cool things going on. No, it doesn't work that way. It literally does not connect. There's no connection. So if there is no physical connection between one network and another network, then there's no way it could happen. Okay, the only way you could physically shut down the electricity leaving the power plant is if you blew up the power plant's transformers or wires or anything like that leaving the power plant, or blew up the power plant itself. But to hack in digitally and take control over the computers and all that stuff, it's not going to happen. So anyways, that's my 2 cents here at American Overwatch. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, and share the video. And let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below in the comment section. Thanks again for watching.